Welcome to Not Factory Approved, the site where I show you just how much I still have yet to learn. Various projects, many different interests. Sometimes you just have to figure things out as you go. Today's video is no exception. Hope you enjoy. For today's challenge, I'm going to try and make the trim pieces, the retaining pieces that hold this strip on. See, some of the holes are here. There are other ones here that I filled when I was filling the body damage. This is the piece that goes there, and it fits on a clip, a strip, and that is over here. This is the original. This is actually the best one I've got, which is not much to go on. Pretty rusty, falling apart. So it's just thin metal, steel, nothing fancy, I don't think. And it's got slots for the screws to hold it in place, and then the stainless steel trim snaps over that. So I have made one, for the most part, here. When I flattened the original piece out, I measured it as 14 thousandths. It's not perfectly flat, and so my choices were 10 thousandths for shim stock or 15 thousandths. And I thought shim stock would be the easiest way to get it, to get the proper material. So I bought 10 thousandths. The following technique is good in showing how I bent the material and got it into shape. However, I tried 15 thousandths, and then I finally had to settle on 20 thousandths to get shim stock that was as stiff as the original steel. 20 thousandths did work, but with some difference. Those are coming up. 3/4 of an inch wide. I'm running this entire length. The length is approximately somewhere around 60 inches. The piece I need is 3/4 of an inch wide. I found that out from the original by flattening it out and measuring, and it has roughly 1/8 of an inch curl on each side, 1/2 an inch in the middle that is flat. So I'll mark this with a pencil, 3/4 of an inch wide, cut it as carefully as I can with the tin snips, and then show you how I form it after that. I've set the tri-square to 3/4 of an inch, the width I need. I'll use that edge as the start it off here. I'll mark it with a carpentry pencil. Use the edge of the saw here, straight edge. Now to cut it. The tin snips I'm going to use are straight cut, newer style. You could probably use the old scissor style. Would work fine if you're careful. These also you have to be careful. You can't just let it wander. But it does. This is straight right, so it tends to have a slight right curve. But you can, right curve, the other left. And if you're careful, you can do a straight line with it. It's Weiss brand, so it's a decent one. I've tried some cheap ones, they don't really work. I can turn this around. Favor my right hand and cut it. There I have it. Pseudo straight, 3/4 of an inch. Be very careful to use gloves because this stuff will cut like a knife. Ask me how I know. Now I will hammer the dents out of it, try and get it as straight as possible. and then start bending the edges. If you want to see how to make a fine channel by hand, please stay tuned. Otherwise, this process didn't really work for what I needed. I had to start again. So if you skip ahead to 1930, roughly, you will see what I had to do to actually get it to the point where I could make a piece that was useful. Part on bending the channel of a C shape, I had to use afterwards with the piece that I had to make to match the window trim. Once I made the piece, then I had to bend it to fit. The trim would snap over top of it. Unfortunately, I was unable to bend the straight piece that I made to get it into the form that I needed. There's a couple of techniques you can use to straighten this out. You can use a ball peen hammer. You have to be careful because its rounded face leaves dents and tends to curl the metal. Another way is to take a flat hammer, in this case a bodywork hammer, and then put it on there and drag the metal through, because if it's thin enough you can do that. And then you can hammer flat any other imperfections you're not happy with. Or you can also do this, run it over an edge, wearing gloves. I can feel it catching on the gloves as I do that, which would be my skin if it wasn't for the gloves. So that's relatively straight. Run it through your fingers as well, and that will flatten out nicely. Fortunately for me, this strip is exactly ½ an inch in the middle before it's folded. So if I center this, then I will use stretch it out. And keep it flat. The problem is that if it's not flat, it tends to create weird bends when you bend it, when you bend the edges over. I used a ball peen hammer in the first one, but this time I'm going to use the bodywork hammer. And you just start putting a mild crease in there, holding it down. We're going to move this closer. I'd like it to be about 1 foot apart. We'll have to do this in stages. I'm going to make sure that the lip I get is the same on each side. Just putting a crease in there. Bends quite easily. So it's best to do this in stages, or you will tend to get a strong curl and you get kinks that are hard to straighten out later. Flatten out more as I hammer it so it's getting a looser fit at the top of the stock. Once you get to the end, you can just work backwards. It seems to work well if I do it in about 3 passes. It gets easier to center, of course, as you get more of a lip on it. Raise this up a bit. It's getting in the way now. little bit. Move that down there. And then you tap it down. Try to make it as straight as possible now. That part, there's a couple little kinks here I got to straighten out. When I had the bar a little too low, as I moved the strip towards the vise, it was bending it upwards. Now, next step. Once again, because it is unfortunate it's all 1/2 inch, I can use this 1/2 inch flat bar, set that in the middle, clamp it in place, and use that to form the edges, to start the curl of the edges, because this bar is not perfectly square, it's got rounded sides to it. And I will set that up when you're not watching. You're not forming it too much at once. If you do, you end up with a sharp kink, and then that metal is stretched. You can just work it back into place afterwards, which is more difficult. One way that seems to work not too badly is to take a screwdriver in from the end and just work it along. And it's not nearly as curved as the other one was. And set this up at just the right angle, gap, so it doesn't go in. And then I can do it right here. I can bend that down. Now do the opposite side. So we've got a slight curve to it and a slight twist. The twist you can just do that and get rid of it, or you can reintroduce another one. When I get it close to where I want it, then I do have an English wheel, so I'll finish it off with that just to finish the curve, but it could just as easily be done with a hammer. Well, not just as easily, that's why I'm using the English wheel. But it can be done with a hammer. This is an old gas line cover, locks into place. Got that from a second-hand store, I believe. It works for things like this to pound against. You can also use an anvil, any good solid piece of metal. It gives you a surface to hammer on. This one is not quite so good. It does have gas written there in the middle, so if you hammer over gas, you get a G, an A, or an S hammered into the metal. It's a small or low flame, a bit of a tail on it. The tip needs a bit more cleaning, but I can't find the tip cleaner at the moment. More acetylene. And it is possible to hold it like this, heat it. I've got a rounded hammer for body work. It has to get red to stretch. It's a lot easier if it's red. We'll see how that fits. Getting better, could have been some more. So far I've stretched it about half an inch. About a half inch more longer than it was before. This has got the curve I want all the way through. If I did this again, I think I would just try and buy a sheet of metal and cut it out to shape and worry about the rest of it later. This took quite a while, and I'm not sure the results are going to be acceptable. I will use the edge of this gas main plug and try and bend down the corners, the edges, and see what happens. This is what the retainer strip looks like after being painted and shaped. Looking kind of rough. See if it works. If not, I have some other possible options, but I don't really want to use them because I have to drill out the body a bit more. So now to fight with this. I've found that any project is helped by a blood sacrifice. Helps things go smoother. It can just be a few drops, but it does help. Doesn't look like much, but yesterday I lost about 5 drops of blood out of that. So now everything should be appeased. And this is the finished trim. Fits not too badly. I think that's acceptable.